play are the moments when the clarinet gets played very quietly and you can almost not hear anything but this beautiful sound. So our first piece on the program is Haydn's Divertimento No. 1 in B flat. And Divertimento is a short, fun piece that was, I think this was composed to be played after dinner. It was just kind of like an entertainment.
Join us to come on in, have a seat, and I welcome you to the Martin Luther King celebration, the 19th Ward Community Association. So we have to start things off with prayer. So we're going to ask our own friend, Ricky Frazier, Reverend Ricky Frazier. I'm used to Pastor Cherry saying, So from Enon Baptist Church, and he also used to live in the 19th, and he reminded me of that last year, that he lived in the 19th.
Good afternoon. Let us bow for a word of prayer.
That is Lachey Harris, who is now the county legislator, and also the second woman that I keep bragging about, African American woman, to be part of the county ledge. So let's welcome Lachey Harris.
Thank you very much, Paola. I'd like to say welcome everyone. Diane Watkins, the president of the 19th Ward Community Association, the current president, Adam McFadden, city council member, and Ricky Frazier, Reverend Ricky Frazier. And of course, all of you that are here, members of the 19th Ward Community Association and members of the neighborhood. I just want to say this is a beloved neighborhood. Martin Luther King had that vision many years ago before I knew anything about the 19th Ward Association, actually before I was born. And I'm glad to know that we are all carrying on his vision for a beloved community. And this community is very dear to me, as many of you. We all work together, we strive to do things together, and we're trying to make this place a better place. And that's the goal, and we need to continue that. I would like to have you guys pause for a moment, take a moment of silence to remember those that we have lost in this community, particularly the Genesee Street shooting. So you take a moment to bow your head, pause, and think about those folks that we have lost.
And I want to make sure I got it right. Urban Takeover, okay? And they're going to be doing wonderful things here, filming documentaries and also their YouTube show. Did I do it right, young man?
You're right.
Okay. And if you're interested in talking to them afterwards, their cards are up front. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Sola, for inviting the Urban Performing Arts Center, where dancers and actors and poets and songwriters and inspiring young people. Been working with young people in the Rochester community for about 20. And let's welcome him with a round of wonderful applause. He's a little nervous.
I'm happy to join you here today on what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Today, in spite of our difficulties and frustrations of the moment, I still have a dream. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they'll not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that the state of Alabama, whose governor's lips are presently speaking with words like interposition and nullification, will be transferred into a situation where little black boys and black girls will be able to join with little white boys and white girls and join hands together. When we let freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will speed up the day when all of God's children, black men, white men, Jews, Gentiles, Protestants, Catholics, and they will join hands together and sing the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last.
My name is Tara Wade, and I would like to introduce from Wilson High School the Wilson Pearl Step Team under the direction of Mr. Jermaine Lennon. They are performing 2 pieces for you guys today.
But I know that he has a passion about young people in this community. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker today, City Councilman Adam McFadden.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
When I was asked to give a keynote address for Martin Luther King, for me, Martin Luther King is remembered most by his speech in Washington, I Have a Dream speech. You heard an expert of it just a few minutes ago by one of our babies in the community. But most people do not talk about who Martin Luther King evolved into. Because we talk about his work when it deals with Montgomery bus boycott. We talk about trying to get equal rights, getting rid of some of the Jim Crow laws that existed in this country. And he was heralded for that. Folks, stop believing in nonviolence as a tactic. You had groups like the Black Panthers, the Nation of Islam, SNCC, who had changed its message, who are all moving towards more of a radical message. You had riots popping up all over the community, even here in Rochester, where people burned property, destroyed communities, and he was seen as being part of the old guard. But in 1967, April of 1967, Martin Luther King decided to give a speech called Beyond Vietnam. I call it the speech that's probably most responsible for his death. Because Martin Luther King had evolved not just as a civil rights leader, but a world leader. The folks back here in the United States, particularly black folks, had moved away from him a little bit. Even his closest allies had moved away from him a little bit. He was isolated. But in 1967, he gave a speech, one, denouncing the Vietnam War, but two, acknowledging that the government had a role to play in ending poverty. Now, I bring this up because even right here in Rochester today, we have the Poverty Initiative, right? We see a lot of stuff on it. People are talking about it. And they tell us that Rochester is the third poorest city in the United States as it comes to childhood poverty. But Martin Luther King, isolated, decided to stand up against the United States government and basically end his friendship with Lyndon B. Johnson. At that point, the government ramped up its COINTELPRO investigation of Martin Luther King. And so, as he began working on poverty, he had decided that he was going to take the government to task about its role in ending poverty, not just for blacks, but for everyone who lived in the United States. He was demanding $30 billion from the federal government to end poverty. Did you know that? Most people don't. He had a 5-point plan that talked about having jobs that had a living wage, talk about having land for economic use, fair housing, opportunities to go to college, and opportunities to own their own businesses, which the civil rights movement actually destroyed in the black community. But most people do not talk about that, Dr. King. And it's amazing to me that most schools don't talk about that Dr. King. Because it was that Dr. King that led him to go to Memphis and become a part of what was going on there with the sanitation workers and them trying to get equal pay for the jobs that they were doing. Now, how many people have ever been to Memphis? One of my favorite places to go. Best food you ever want to have. But they also have the Lorraine Motel, where Dr. King was assassinated. And it's now a civil rights museum. And there's nothing like it in the United States. Maybe in Cincinnati, it might be the only one. But this one here is very special. Because if you go on the right day, they have members from the Department of Sanitation in Memphis who were around during this time. You have Reverend Kyles, who was the last minister to have dinner with Reverend King, who will tell you some of the things that I'm telling you now about what it was that drew Dr. King's attention. And that was about ending poverty. So Dr. King was organizing a march on Washington. Not just a march where they came and heard a speech, but they literally wanted to shut Washington down and have people in the streets stop traffic, interrupt business, and let DC know that we are not going home without some action from Congress and the president. So April 3rd, Dr. King returns to Memphis. He gives a fiery speech that night. It's a very famous speech. It's also one that people like to use where he talks about, I may not get there with him. Some people say he predicted his own assassination in that speech. And then the next day, April 4th, 1968, he was assassinated. Gunned down. Not because he wanted us to drink from the same water fountain. A lot of people would like you to believe that. That's not what it was about. It's because he decided to stand up against the government and hold their feet to the fire to make sure that the promise of economic prosperity could be met by all, no matter where they lived, no matter what their color was, that America kept this promise not just for the pursuit of happiness and liberty, but economic freedom. And after he lost his life, the message actually did not die. There was a committee of 100 leaders led by Ralph Abernathy and SCLC who said, we're going to continue to have this because it's important. But can you imagine one person dying? They had to get 100 people to replace him. One person. They had to get 100 people to replace him because they wanted to get people from not just urban communities, but rural communities, suburban communities, on the street and into DC. So May of 1968, people began to arrive in DC. Many of them stayed 6 weeks. Now, how many of you have ever gone to a march or a rally? If it's 2 hours, it might be too long, right? 6 weeks. And they handed that 5-point plan, not just to the president, but they met with every particular department at the federal level demanding economic justice and telling people like HUD, the Department of the Interior, what it is that they could do. And you know how the government responded when they heard they were coming? They got the National Guard ready. They were afraid that these folks would riot and hurt folks. These people weren't there to hurt anybody. They were there to have their voice heard. So when you fast forward to today, and you think about not just Martin Luther King and his work, but let's think about when the first slave ships arrived to the United States. 1619. Columbus arrived in 1492. And all the things that we have gained, because we've gained a lot. To say that we have Barack Obama as president today, just literally 50 years after civil rights legislation was passed federally, we've accomplished a lot. We're able to live where we can afford. We're able to go into businesses and buy anything we can afford. We're able to sit down next to someone on public transportation and not have to move. Many people stood with Dr. King. And we should celebrate all the gains that we made. When you think about this, and I tell people to think about racism this way. If this was a foot race, and I gave somebody a 10-year head start, could I ever catch up? Not by foot. So imagine people in this country had a 400-year head start. And we're catching up. A 400-year head start. That's 400 years of owning land that could be transferred down generations. 400 years of getting educated for white males, because females couldn't get educated at some point in this country, just like black people couldn't. 400 years of not being able to read. 400 years of not being able to look people in the eye. We have a lot to celebrate. We have more black and Latino elected officials than we've ever had. But with that being said, when you read that 5-point plan, Dr. King's work is unfinished. We're still talking about the same issues. Adequate health care, housing, a living wage, and the ending of poverty. Isn't that weird? But we don't remember that about Dr. King. We remember I Have a Dream speech. And that was a beautiful speech. But that's not what he evolved to. What he evolved to was not about just making sure that white people and black people could get along, but that poor people had a chance in this country. That people understood if you went to war against another country, that you would be taking innocent lives, no matter what the cause was. So think about our occupation in the Middle East right now. How many lives have been lost? Both U.S. citizens and foreign citizens. Innocent lives. And we get into the politics of why we're there. Just like Dr. King got into the politics of why we were in Vietnam. But if we don't take care of what's going on at home and our current civil rights struggle, which isn't just about poverty, but because we had these years of what I would call this unfair race, we are facing destruction in our own communities by our own folks. Some of it by design, some of it because of ignorance, and some of it is because we got tired and scared ourselves. See, Dr. King said what he needed to say, not worrying about who was behind him. And you think about what's going on in our community today, and you see things happen, and you wonder, where's our leaders? Why aren't they saying anything? How many people have said that? You see something happen, and you say, why isn't anybody saying anything? The somebody is you. Dr. King has put something in all of us that we're not waiting for Superman or him to return. He has paid the ultimate sacrifice for us to be able to stand up now. And some of us, we have reasons for not standing up. Some of us worry about our employment, which is fair. Some of us worry about the safety of our family, which is fair. But for this community to move forward, we got to get rid of those fears. Because if we stand together, those fears don't exist. If we stand by ourselves, we have a reason to be fearful. But I want to end on something that I like to do normally at the beginning of my speech, but I wanted to get right into what I felt about Dr. King. So I'm going to ask everyone to stand. And I'm asking everyone to stand because we stand on the shoulders of people who came before us, right? Everybody can think about somebody in their life that made some sacrifice for them to be here today, right? Somebody that pushed you to do right even when you wanted to do wrong. Somebody that told you you could do it when you felt like you couldn't, right? So on the count of 3, what I'm going to ask you to do is to put that person's name into the universe because they deserve to be called out in thanks and gratitude. Because of them, you are here. Because of them, you're successful. Because of them, you're the person who you are today. So on the count of 3, I want you to yell that person's name out. 1, 2, 3. Obama. Felt good, right? You might miss that person a great deal. They may never know what they meant to you. But because you put their name out into the universe, like Dr. King, they know that we're ready to go forward. We have unfinished work. It's time to roll up our sleeves and do that job. Thank you.
Close your closing remark, and then I will just talk to you a little bit about the luminary, and then you can start practicing down for the song.
I want to express my extreme gratitude that so many people would come out, bring their children out, celebrate with us here today. The 19th Ward Community Association is an organization of volunteers. They're people who just show up for events like these, and we bring our children. So, as Adam mentioned, Dr. King talked about poverty. We had a poverty campaign. Please don't let anyone convince you that poverty doesn't matter. It does. There's a theorist who talks about our self-actualization and meeting our basic needs. His name is Maslow. And he has his pyramid, and at the very base of that pyramid, you have to have your food, shelter, clothing, safety needs met way before you can contemplate anything like homework or an essay or a math test. Too many of our children don't have these things met. The 19th Ward Community Association, we hold many events like this. We have candlelight dinners coming up. We have a skating party coming up in February 13th. At the ice rink. We have Square Fair. We keep holding these events so that our community and most importantly our children show up. Because as you saw today, when our children show up, they show out. We can be very proud of them. So we as a community association want to keep doing these events to bring these children out, and that's our way of supporting and bringing Dr. King's dream to fruition as best we can. So although we may not be able to meet every need, we just keep trying. We just keep showing up. So again, thank you for showing up today, and have a great King weekend.
To honor Martin Luther King, they do luminaries. They light up the night. So last year, it was just absolutely amazing that all down Aberdeen, Wellington, Aldine. And last year we had the Plex and the Cottage Street Block Club join us, so all down Plymouth. So this year they've increased that down Plymouth, down to Jefferson, down to Columbia, on Genesee Street near Brooks, on the Ellicott, and along with lighting up those streets, folks are opening up their homes to their neighbors, what we call hot spots. So inside of your packet, you will see a list of all of those hot spots. And you program those hot spots for you to go and visit, for you to talk with your neighbor, get to know one another. Everything our brothers and sisters talked about today is truly about we getting to know one another. Because think about it, how many of your neighbors do you know on the street that you live? Not too many, right? Unless you're dead, you probably know everybody. All right. So what we're asking is, how many folks in this room live in the 19th?
Yeah.
So, all right. So what I'm asking you to do is today make a pledge to join us next year. We're going to start in August. You got that? We'll all go over and eat at the Arnett. I'm not paying for it. Okay, so let's make some changes. So we're going to sing this song, and then we're all going to lead out. But I want to make sure if there's somebody in this room, that you don't know today, today is going to be your blessing. So please don't leave here without getting to know somebody that you've never seen before. Okay? Trust me, it's going to be next year, so remind her that. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. say photo op. Everybody.